안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. 오늘 여러 가지 어려운 여건 속에서도 이렇게 국제학술회의를 준비하고 주최해 주신 몽골 학회 관계자 여러분께 심심한 치하와 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 우리가 이 모임을 시작한 지가 10년이 넘었습니다. 그동안 여러 곳에서 다양한 주제를 가지고 많이 토론하고 또 대화하면서 서로 이해하고 또 교류를 해왔었습니다. 지난해부터 세계를 휩쓴 코비드-19 팬데믹으로 인해서 우리의 이 노력도 잠시 중단될 수밖에 없었습니다. 그러나 여러분들의 이 노력으로 이렇게 랜선으로 함께 모여서 일의 지혜를 나누는 이런 장을 마련하게 된 것을 매우 뜻깊게 생각합니다. 나아가서 이번 모임이 우리가 새롭게 나아가는 방향을 모색하는 그런 계기가 되기를 기대합니다. 먼저 팬데믹 기간 동안 여러 나라의 가족이라든지 사회 재반 문제에 대한 이 성찰과 평가를 통해서 앞으로 전개될 새로운 상황에 대응하는 대안들을 모색하는 좋은 기회가 되지 않을까 생각합니다. 또 이 줌 회의라는 이런 새로운 연결 방식을 활용한다면은 더 자주 또 대화하고 소통하고 협력하는 계기로도 될 수 있지 않을까 하는 기대를 합니다. 그렇지만은 무엇보다도 이런 사태가 조속히 종식되어서 내년에는 우리 함께 모여서 서로 얼굴 마주하면서 발표하고 토론하고 즐겁게 교류하는 그런 해가 되기를 간절히 희망합니다. 다시 한번 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 감사합니다.
The lowest fertility rate, changes in family-rated values and the responses of family policies in South Korea. With this following contents, I will present. The outlines are: first, demographical changes; second, changes in family-related values; and third, lastly, policy changes in the future. The tendency of low fertility and low birth rate is continuing now in Korea, and very seriously. Between 2015 and 2020, the number of births decreased by 37.9%. The fertility rate decreased from 1.24 to 0.84. It is the world record. There is a tendency in Korea from an aging society to a super-aged society. Korea has been experiencing the aging phenomenon that has taken place over 100 years in Western European countries for 30 to 40 years. It is a compressed aging trend now in South Korea. If this trend continues, Korea's population will decrease from the current 52 million to 33.6 million in about 40 years. It is a decrease of about 40%. As a response to the low birth rate, the expansion of family policies has been taking place over the past 20 years. You see the various policies and new introduced institutions in South Korea now here. Although we have introduced many family policies and new institutions in the last 20 years, Korea ranks lowest among OECD member countries in terms of proportional family welfare expenditure
related to childbirth and childcare as a percentage of gross domestic product. The average of OECD is about 2,34, but the rate of Korea is about 1,3, the half of the OECD level.
We can say no money, no child. Countries with a high level of family welfare spending, they have also a high fertility rate. Only 3 countries, United States, Mexico, and Turkey, they have a higher fertility rate while spending less on family welfare than Korea. I guess it depends on the cultural background. There are also demographical changes, but also changes in family-related values. I will introduce the changes in family-related values in South Korea. There was dramatical changes in family-related values, and it is a main cause of low birth rate. The result of failing to adequately respond to changes in family-related values is the continuing low fertility phenomenon in South Korea. Especially, there are dramatical decrease in marriage in the last 20 years. The decrease in the marriage rate is also due to the decrease in the size of the youth population, young population. The divorce rate has been stable, relatively stable since the 2000. It can be interpreted that marriage itself is a relationship-centered and prudent choice. There are less young people who think we should be married. We should marry. As a natural life cycle of life, the perception of marriage changes across the generation. More women are thinking now they are treated unequal in family relationships, and more men are thinking now they have burden of support as a head of household, and it appears as a result of changes in their marriage-related values. They don't think they must marry now according to the old generation. In addition to this, the overall view of life has changed, making marriage a choice rather than an obligation. Marriage became choice, not an obligation, not a duty. In the end, marriage is no longer a part of the natural life cycle of life, but a plan. You see young women, about 22.4% of young women, they have responded to the question of the statistical office, and then only 20% of young women are thinking now they should be married, and 40% of young women, young men are thinking now they must marry. No marriage, no child in South Korea. There is a tendency in Korea to view unmarried childbirth as taboo. You see now the ratio of birth outside of marriage 2018, the average of OECD countries is about 40%. It means 40 babies of 40s of the 100 babies they are born in a year. They are born in outside of the marriage, without marriage. French about 60%. But in Korea, there is only 2% of birth outside of marriage. It means 2 of 100 babies are born now outside of marriage. Therefore, the decrease in the marriage rate is one of the important factors for the low fertility or the lowest low fertility in the world. Now, South Korea must change our family policies in front of the policy challenges in the future. The fourth basic plan for low fertility and aging society, I am personally a member of this committee, can be considered as a first step for the institutional acceptance of diverse families. We must abandon of child promotion policy. In the past, the Korean government has pursued the child birth promotion policies, and women are feeling now they are forced to give a birth independent of their willing. And second, we must expand the child-centered support system, not marriage-centered support system, but child-centered support system. And we must expand the democratic relations in the families. And we must support families as a relationship-oriented living community. We must protect the common law in familial relationship, and we must protect non-married relationships. And we must reform the patrilinealism in civil war. It means one example is the generalization of adopting mothers' family names. Mother or women should have a chance to give their family name to their children according to the law. And we need various forms of family support for one-person household, living communities, and single-parent family. It means we need family policies to support the diverse forms of families. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Yongchan Byun and I'm working at Korean Social Policy Institute. I'm pleased to be here and to present a paper at the international conference titled COVID-19 and the Social Welfare Strategy. Now I'd like to present a paper about COVID-19 and the family policy for the disabled in Korea. The content is like this. First, introduction, Korea's policy for families with persons with disabilities, COVID-19 and the persons with disabilities, and the measures to improve family policies for persons with disabilities in the context of COVID-19 and conclusions. Compared to the parents of non-disabled children, parents of disabled children experience more severe stress in raising their children. Therefore, support for families with children with disabilities helps them to overcome such stress and further crisis of family care. COVID-19, which emerged in these circumstances, seems to have worsened the situation for families with disabilities. There have been cases in which parents of disabled children made an extreme choice, like a suicide in Korea, due to the difficulties in caring for children with disabilities recently. Korea's family support policy for children with disabilities has been largely divided into two parts. First one is in the field of education, and the second one is in the welfare-related fields. And in the field of education, we have a Special Education Promotion Act was completely amended in 2007, and this is a main role for the educational service for the children with disabilities. In the welfare-related fields, that is the Welfare Act for persons with disabilities and Act on Prohibition of Discrimination against the Persons with Disability Act. These are main laws. Until now, Korea's disability policy has focused primarily on support for people with disabilities. For this reason, support for families with disabled persons is insufficient. Recently, to strengthen the support for the children with disabilities, Children with Disabilities Welfare Support Act and Act on Guarantee of Rights and Support for People with Developmental Disability was enacted. With this act, government provides services like rehabilitation services, activity support services, care services, respite services for the parents, but the level of support is still insufficient to the needs of the family with children with disabilities. Now I move to COVID-19 and persons with disabilities. Although COVID-19 is an infectious disease, its effects are not limited to medical aspects and affect the entire life of the disabled. In particular, the damage is concentrated on vulnerable groups such as the disabled and their families with poor economic and poor social conditions and poor living environments. Due to the COVID-19, people with disabilities face various difficulties in various areas of life. There is a gap in the care of the families of the disabled children due to the suspension of operation of welfare services for the disabled. In particular, in the era of COVID-19, there is a lot of confusion in the fields of care services and other human services, which were mainly face-to-face services, but it is done by the type of non-face-to-face. Because of this, the burden of care tends to be passed on the family. Yes. As a result, the burden on families is increasing. In April 2020, the National Solidarity for the Disabled Parents conducted a survey on parents with children, and the results showed that 87% of people with developmental disabilities showed negative changes in their life patterns. And also, parents of children with developmental disabilities were found to experience health problems. 73.7% of parents said they were tired from continuous care. 48.2% of them experienced severe emotional ups and downs, and 46.7% of them had unstable sleep and were dazed. The Korean Human Rights Commission conducted a survey on parents with disabled children. 20.5% of the total respondents, one of the parents quit their job in order to take care of their disabled children. About 80% of those who quit were mothers. So it has become very difficult for parents to maintain a livelihood due to the increased burden of care. Now, we move to measures to improve family policies for persons with disabilities in the context of COVID-19. First of all, we need an establishment of emergency care system for the disabled and families with children with disabilities. The central and local government should support organizations that provide welfare services for the disabled, such as independent living centers and welfare centers for the disabled and children with disabilities, to establish an emergency care system. This is to prepare for unexpected situations, such as when the disabled person is confirmed with COVID-19 or self-isolated, or when the activity support worker is confirmed. Second one is the establishment of disability inclusive care system, that is community care system for care of the families with disabled children. Community care system is necessary in order to be able to solve problems of care and health care in the community where the disabled live, and to live without marginalizations. Through this system, the children with disabilities and their families should be cared in the community and by the community. So for the community care systems, the independent living center, welfare center, attending physician for the disabled, the National Health Insurance Corporation, National Pension Services, as well as the local government, such as 시군구 offices. All these various institutions will develop a community care system so that families with disabled children can receive customized care services. Okay, now is a conclusion. The government policy to respond to COVID-19 must be comprehensive, and it must be established and implemented in the direction that takes into account the type of disability or the area of life of the disabled, children with disabilities and their families. In addition, it should be a sustainable policy rather than an ad hoc or temporary policy, and it needs to be promoted by establishing a system in which health, medical care, and welfare services are interconnected. Thank you for your listening. Thank you very much.